You're listening to Arts Alive, and our guest is Jennifer Gibson of Gibson Auctioneers and Valuers. Jennifer, is auctioneering the business of men or women, or both these days?
Oh, very much both, I think. And has been, I'm happy to say, in Australia for the last at least 25 years. I know of a number of female auctioneers and, of course, and male auctioneers who are all in business and still in business.
My impression is that real estate auctioning remains very much a male provenance. Is that just a warped impression, or is that so?
I think real estate auctioneers have been predominantly male, but I think there is a change that has been happening over the last 5 to 10 years, where there is I have to say, a happier cross-section of male and female representatives in the auctioneering business.
Well, how does the member of the general public with things for sale approach an auction house? Some auction houses clearly want to deal with collections. They're, while other auction houses seem to invite people to submit single objects. Is there a specialisation here in auction houses, or are all auction houses general auctioneers and just simply vary their program over the time to deal with different opportunities?
The good thing about the Australian market is there's a huge range of auctioneers offering all sorts of different specialities and ranges in which they sell. Of course, you get the top end of the market, which is Christie's and Sotheby's, and they clearly have what they call thresholds for items consigned to auction. But there is a very good range of boutique auctioneers, of which Gibson's are one, where we can offer a huge range of pieces with the expertise across the board. So an individual can call us or contact us via email or the web, or simply walk through the doors here with a piece to be appraised, and we're happy to look at it for them.
And what range of goods do you particularly deal with? Do you strictly fine art and craft and things like that, or do you branch out into things like automobiles if the chance was there?
We probably wouldn't be able to drive them up to the second floor, sadly, here at level 1, but what I do have from 25 years of, in the business, in the auction business, is I have a huge range of contacts and specialists who I can turn to in relation to very good advice about pretty much anything across the board that someone wants to sell.
Now, you've mentioned you've been in the business 25 years. How did you start? Let's tell us about your journey through the intricacies of the auction business.
I actually started 25 years ago unpacking boxes at an auction house here in Melbourne, and basically it was a cabinet room, and I had to wash my hands about 10 times a day to try and get rid of the newsprint. Other than that, obviously I had studied previously, but I think in the auction business it's not a bad idea to start at the bottom rung, because you learn the business from the bottom up, from the nitty gritty and the not so pretty, right up to the more glamorous aspect of the market, which of course is the fine art sales and the high end of the market.
Now, your specialties are furniture and decorative arts, fine Australian and international arts, according to the press release. Did you have an academic qualification to begin with and then got into auctioneering, or how does the two elements come together?
I did start with an academic qualification, but unfortunately it wasn't in the arts. So training for me on the job, I'd always had an interest in it. My parents had always had an interest, and training for me was on the job, which, as I said, started 25 years ago.
Well, tell us about the business of training to be an auctioneer. You said you start at the bottom. That's basically an apprenticeship system. Is that how every auctioneer starts, or are there, growing up these days as we seem to be getting tertiary college courses in everything, is there a tertiary college course in auctioneering?
I don't think there is. No, there isn't a tertiary college course in auctioneering per se, certainly not for fine and decorative art. My first stint on the rostrum was selling box lots in a cabinet room on a fairly rickety rostrum, and I think they started at $5, the box lots. So that's where I started on the rostrum. These days I think it's very different though. Clearly there are many more courses in terms of the arts that you can do. There is, obviously, we have a number of interns and students who come to us who've done art curatorial courses, and they also wish to learn the business. But even so, I don't think there's any substitute for hands-on experience in an auction house. It is a very unique process. It's a very interesting process. It's a busy and hard-working process. And I think on-the-job training is such an integral part of actually doing a course of that nature.
So if I wanted to become an auctioneer, admittedly I'd be starting quite late, the only place I've got to start is in the storeroom.
Almost. You could go overseas and do one of the excellent courses that are offered at Christie's and Sotheby's, and I believe they give on-the-job and hands-on training.
Well, finally, how about some tall tales and true from the auction platform? Clearly, an auctioneer's got to... there's a certain theatricality we've mentioned earlier. How much is the auctioneer responsible for driving the climate within an auction room? And perhaps a few stories about your own auctioneering experience.
For a live auction, I think a good auctioneer is extremely important. Over the years, of course, I've had the opportunity to see both good and bad. I like to think that I've had good training on the job from all of the auctioneers who I've learnt from. During my time at Sotheby's, we had one of the best auctioneers in the world, Lord Mark Poltimore, who came out to do some training with us, and he was quite amazing, and obviously he'd had fabulous training as well. So,
what made him amazing then?
It was his style and the fact that he was a very relaxed auctioneer. You know, sometimes you can tell when an auctioneer is nervous or tense, and of course the auctioneer is the driver of the room, and it's very much, the room very much picks up on what the auctioneer is doing. So if you, it's quite hard for new auctioneers, of course, because you tend to be a bit nervous and tense. So that does, it's strange, but it generates into the room. So if you get an auctioneer who's confident, relaxed, who's excited about the process, who knows what they're doing, it's just a much better process for everything across the board in terms of the bidders, the phone bidders, the experience, everyone's experience of the room, really.
And how about some tall tales and true? Although I should say, in respect to those comments, I looked at the video of the auctioneer auctioneering Salvatore Mundi, probably the most expensive item ever to go to auction. Have you seen that video? Is he relaxed?
I haven't seen the video, no, I have to say, the Salvatore Mundi. I did see, it was interesting, there was a video, a YouTube video that's just gone online about the sale of the first Porsche, which I believe was conducted by a subsidiary of Sotheby's, and the auctioneer was Dutch, and it was his accent that was very confusing, and instead of sounding, well, he was saying 14 million, which in itself is a large amount of money, it came across on the visual and audio feed as 40 million. So, of course, he was doing rises of 40 and then 50, and then, well, for him it was 14 and 15 and 16. But on the actual video, it sounded like 50 million. So, of course, it was this major auction record, and the room was going mad. And, of course, the person who was the clerk keying in to throw it up on the screen, which is what happens these days, was doing the same thing. He thought the auctioneer was saying 40 million instead of 14 million. So the room went into uproar. It was quite amazing. It's you can still view it on YouTube, I think.
And how about from your own experience? Any tall tales and true you will share with us?
I could share one. There was a very expensive item at an auction room that I was working at, and it started at a certain level. I think our estimate was 10 to 15,000. The hammer fell at around 110,000. I beg your pardon. And I had a call from the underbidder the next day who said to me, "I really wanted that piano that sold, but I didn't really want to go any further." But she said at the time, she said, "I'd had quite a few gin and tonics, and I don't think I knew what level of bidding I was going to." So she said, "It's probably a good thing I didn't get it." And I thought, oh dear, you know, what would have happened if she had got it? So anyway, I'm sure the new purchaser was happy with it, but they did ring the next day to apologise to a certain level and say that they'd had a lot of gin and tonic, and they were quite worried that had they got it or not. And I said, "Well, no, you weren't the winning bidder." And she sort of heaved a sigh of relief and hung up the phone.
Well, it just assures us that going to auction is a sobering business. Jennifer Gibson, the Chief Executive and Head of Valuations at Gibson Auctioneers and Valuers. Thanks for your time today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Vincent.